Brilliance Audio presents Charlie Joe Jackson's Guide to Reading. Not reading. Now that's more like it. By Tommy Greenwald. Performed by Macleod Andrews. So, here I am in middle school, and I'm proud to say I still hate reading, which is how the whole mess began. It started when I was supposed to read this book, Billy's Bargain, for my English class. It's about this kid, Billy, and the bargain he strikes with the devil to pitch a no-hitter in the championship game. But it turns out the devil is actually just a guy that was hired by Billy's dad to pretend to be the devil. Because Billy's dad figures that if Billy thinks he made a deal with the devil to pitch a no-hitter, then Billy would have the confidence to actually pitch a no-hitter. It's not as complicated as I just made it sound. It's apparently a pretty good book, according to my teacher, Ms. Farrell. And I guess it's got one of those just believe in yourself and others will believe in you too messages that grown-ups want kids to hear over and over. Anyway, like I said, that's where I ran into trouble. I did what I usually do. I read the back cover, the front inside flap, the first chapter, and the last chapter. Then I sat next to my friend Timmy McGibney at lunch. For about 2 years, Timmy and I had what you might call an arrangement. I would buy him an ice cream sandwich, and he would tell me all about what was in the rest of the book. It was a win-win situation, which is one of those weird expressions my parents use all the time. Naturally, I figured we'd make the same deal we always made. "So, Timmy," I said, handing him his ice cream sandwich, "Billy's Bargain was a pretty good book." "How would you know?" he asked. He always asked me that. It was kind of a routine we had. "Well, the beginning and the ending were pretty good." "I guess so," Timmy said. He was fiddling with his lacrosse stick. Lacrosse was the only thing he loved more than ice cream sandwiches. "Tryouts coming up, huh?" I said, pointing at his stick. "Yup," he said. I waited for him to say something else, but he didn't. This was weird. Usually he could talk about lacrosse for hours. Timmy wolfed down his ice cream sandwich and looked at mine. "I'm actually really hungry today," he said. "Really, really hungry." I suddenly got a pretty uneasy feeling. "What do you mean, really, really hungry?" "I'm saying I'm so hungry I could eat 2 ice cream sandwiches," Timmy said. "Maybe 3. I looked at him in disbelief. We'd had the same deal going for almost a year. I'd handed over enough free ice cream for him to start his own dairy farm. Now all of a sudden he was pulling this? I looked around. I checked my pocket for money. I considered my options. Then I did the only thing I could do. I bought him another ice cream sandwich. After lunch, I went to the library and looked up the word blackmail just to make sure I understood exactly what was happening. The librarian, Ms. Reedy, was an old friend of mine, even though she represented everything evil. Back in the old days, she was the librarian at my elementary school, and she used to try anything to get me to read. One time in first grade, she sat me down and had me listen to a song called "Grab a Book and Go," all about the joys of reading. One of the verses went, "Snuggle in your bed, the day is near its end. All alone, but you're not alone, a book can be your friend." I've never quite forgiven her. So needless to say, she gave me quite the double take when I walked in. "Charlie Joe," she said. "Did you take a wrong turn somewhere?" I laughed. Always good to laugh at an adult's jokes, regardless of whether they're funny or not. "I just need to look something up," I answered, trying to keep the conversation to a minimum so I could take care of business and get out of there. Ms. Reedy looked at me and winked. "Well, don't worry, Charlie Joe. Your secret is safe with me," she said. Charlie Joe's tip number 2. Never read a book by someone whose name you can't pronounce. Let's face it, chances are you wouldn't be reading this book if it were called The Nedkaistokiruski's Guide to Not Reading. And I sure wouldn't be writing it. My point is, if you have to read, it's really important to make sure the cover doesn't scare you in any way. And that starts with the author's name. It has to be reader-friendly. Like Charlie Joe Jackson, for example.
In the novel, Charlie Joe Jackson's Guide to Not Reading, the book Charlie Joe doesn't want to read is Billy's Bargain by Ted Hauser. Here is a sample of Billy's Bargain for you to hear.
Billy's Bargain Excerpt. The season was finally over, and Billy had one last piece of business to take care of. But it was hard to find the time because he was busy. Pitching a no-hitter in the Little League Championship game and becoming a big hero turned out to be a lot of work. All of a sudden, everyone wanted to be his friend. Everyone wanted to hang out with him all the time. Even a couple of girls who had never noticed him before started texting him, smiley faces and all. But he knew he couldn't ignore it forever. Someone was waiting for him. Someone who wouldn't take no for an answer. They'd set up the meeting for the Saturday night after the game, under the highway bridge at 10 o'clock. Billy told his parents he was going to bed, then slipped out the back. He grabbed his skateboard and took off, his backpack flapping in the wind. Inside the backpack was what he needed to put this whole thing behind him. When he got there, a lone figure was standing in the shadows by the overpass. He was smoking a cigarette, which smelled disgusting. The figure threw his cigarette to the ground and stubbed it out with one of his extra pointy boots. Then he stepped out of the shadows and into the glare of a bright streetlight. It was him, the devil. Billy swallowed hard. "Hey." The devil grinned, his one gold tooth shining front and center. "Nice to see you again, Billy." "Nice to see you too, sir." "I told you before. Call me Devin." Devin the devil always felt a little cheesy to Billy, but he wasn't about to argue. "Got it. Sorry, Devin." The devil chuckled. "No worries. Did you bring it? A deal's a deal. I held up my end of the bargain. Now it's your turn." Billy took a deep breath. "Yep, I got it." He reached into his backpack and pulled out his mom's favorite carving fork. The steel gleamed as he handed it over. "Here you go, Devin." The devil took the giant fork and looked it over. "Ah, she's a beaut," he murmured. "Just what I needed." The devil started thrusting it around in the air as if it were a sword. Can I ask you something?" Billy nervously interrupted. The devil abruptly stopped. "What is it?" "Well," Billy stammered, "I just always thought you were into pitchforks. So what's with the carving fork?" The devil chuckled. "Don't believe everything you read." Billy snuck a peek at his cell phone. 10:14. Time to go. "Well, nice doing business with you. Thanks again," he said, grabbing his board and getting ready to take off. "Oh, Billy, one last thing." Billy stopped. Oh boy, he knew it wasn't going to be this easy. He suddenly started to regret the whole thing. The devil smiled. "Don't be scared. I just want you to meet someone I work with. He's a great guy. He really helped me put this whole deal together, so you might want to thank him too." Then the devil let out a huge whistle, which was obviously some sort of signal. It was dead silent for about a minute, but Billy could hear his heart pounding. Finally, he heard footsteps coming from way down the tunnel. He saw a man emerging into the light. He thought the walk looked familiar. The man got closer, and when Billy saw who it was, he nearly jumped out of his skin. He couldn't believe his eyes. He rubbed them. He looked up again. Holy smokes. It was his dad. "Hey, Billy," he said. "Surprised to see me?" Billy didn't say a word. He couldn't. He looked at the devil, who suddenly just looked like a guy with a gold tooth and a big carving fork in his hand. "I want you to meet my buddy, Devin Antis," said Billy's dad, "otherwise known as, well, you know what he's otherwise known as." I don't get it," Billy finally sputtered out. His dad went over to Billy and put his arm around him. "Do you remember what you were like at the beginning of the baseball season? You were a mess. You thought you stunk, right? And then you had that practice game when you walked like 10 guys in a row? I remember, Billy said glumly. Well, I decided I needed to do something to boost your confidence, something big. And then I thought, why not let you make a deal with the devil? Because anybody who makes a deal with the devil knows that they've got some serious ammunition on their side. Billy's dad smacked his friend on the shoulder. And Devin here, with his tattoos and his gold tooth, looks like a pretty scary little devil to me. Both men chuckled. Then Billy's dad looked at Billy. Sure enough, you suddenly look like Sandy Koufax out there. My point is, if you just have the confidence to do something, then it's a heck of a lot easier to actually do it. You don't need to have the devil on your side. You just need to have skill and the heart and the courage to believe in yourself. Billy was in shock. He looked back on how he first met Devin, and the bargain they made, and how Devin would only meet in dark, deserted places, and suddenly it all made sense. And Billy felt like a total dummy for believing it in the first place. But he still had his no-hitter, and no one could take that away from him. Come on, Billy, let's go home, said his dad. Devin went up to Billy and stuck out his hand. Hey, dude, no hard feelings? They shook hands. I guess not, Billy said. Can I get that fork back, though? Of course, laughed Devin, giving Billy back the carving fork. Billy's dad suddenly looked alarmed. Oh, that reminds me. What, Dad? His dad leaned in real close to Billy. Not a word of this to your mom, he said, and they headed home.
Ted Hauser has written nearly 4,000 children's books. Billy's Bargain is the only one that has been published. I've got a couple of questions for the author, Tommy Greenwald. How did you come up with the character of Charlie Joe Jackson?
Charlie Joe Jackson is named directly after my three sons, my three boys, Charlie, Joe, and Jack, all of whom hated to read, were very much reluctant readers when they grew up. And I knew at some point I would love to write a book that might appeal to the most reluctant readers, like my kids.
What did you do to prepare to write Charlie Joe Jackson? How did you get into the character?
Well, thanks to you, my agent, Michelle Rubin, who had always encouraged me to write a book. I was always trying to come up with an idea that I wanted to turn into a book, and I didn't know whether it would be an adult book or a children's book. And then, as I said, my kids, Charlie, Joe, and Jack, all hated to read, so I had an idea for a picture book, a very short book called The Boy Who Hated Reading. I sent that to you, and you encouraged me to turn it into a more substantial book for middle grade readers, middle school readers. And the first thing you did was give me a bunch of books by a bunch of authors and say, go read these. And that scared me. And I tried to read them, but much like Charlie Joe, I basically only read the first part and the last part and skipped the bits in the middle, which seemed to prepare me well to write a book about a boy who hates to read, because the first thing I did was refuse to read what you wanted me to read. But in any event, I came up with the character of Charlie Joe Jackson and wrote the first draft in about 3 months, and we were off and running.
So, what's Charlie Joe up to next?
So the second book, which is called Charlie Joe Jackson's Guide to Extra Credit, is about how Charlie is forced to get his grades up, or else he'll have to go spend his summer at a camp for reading and writing, which is pretty much the worst thing in the world. And to get his grades up, he has to embark on a series of extra credit projects in a bunch of his classes that naturally go quite catastrophically wrong in a number of ways.
So we can look forward to Charlie Joe never being reformed.
Yes, Charlie Joe is not one of these kids who sees the error of his ways and, as you said, reforms. He's one of these kids who sees the errors of his ways and then continues to do the very same things that got him in trouble in the first place.
Thanks,
Great.
Tommy.
You're welcome. Hi, I'm Tommy Greenwald. Thanks for listening to Charlie Joe Jackson's Guide to Not Reading. As you just heard, Charlie Joe Jackson was forced to listen to a song about reading and how wonderful reading was back when he was a young boy, and he was traumatized by that song. He couldn't stand it, and he's been traumatized by it ever since. But lucky you get to listen to that song right now.
pages of a book. Don't be shy, give it a try. Come on and take a look. There's so much to see once you look inside. You're in for a treat, so take a seat. Get ready to take a ride. Grab a book and go. It'll take you anywhere. Near or far, high or low, a book will get you there. A book will get you there. Snuggle in your bed. The day is near an end. On your own, but you're not alone. A book can be a friend. Grab a book and go. It'll take you anywhere. Near or far, high or low, a book will get you there. A book will get you there. Hey, hey, what page are you on? 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 After just one page, I'm sure you will agree. Reading's fun for everyone. Just try it and you'll see. Grab a book and go. It'll take you anywhere. Near or far, high or low, a book will get you there. Grab a book and go. It'll take you anywhere. Near or far, high or low, a book will get you there. A book will get you there. What page are you on? Oh, what page will get you there. What page are you on? What page are you on? What page are you on? What page are you on?
Page 1, go!
Performance copyright 2011 by Brilliance Audio. All rights reserved.